Class, this is a highlights reel of the homework number 1 tutorial I had last night. So this homework has 1, 2, 3 exercises from the book, followed by a programming project. So we're going to take a look first at the exercises. First exercise is 1.14. So this one, you've got a bunch of ASCII characters you need to print. You are going to do it just with a bunch of println statements. No loops are necessary. But what I want you to do is to look for any areas you can reduce redundancy. So if you see code here and code here that's the same, then I want you to put that into a method and have your main method call these sub-methods. Okay, so there's no code, there's no for loops necessary. It's just to get you used to the idea of how to reduce redundancy. Okay, this next step, you've probably never seen anything like this in CSC 110. This is very well covered in the book, and it's also very well covered in a tutorial that I have in the assignment as well. But I want to go quickly over this once again. So this is the basic form of ASCII art that is also in the Space Needle. Okay, there's some pattern of characters, and you need to first of all figure out what is the pattern. So what I first want you to do, let me fire up Notepad here. First I want you to do is to look and see what is the pattern of characters. So we've got two things here. We've got patterns for backslashes and patterns for exclamation points. So for the backslashes, how many backslashes are there? I'm not going to give the exact number, but let's say that it's one. Let's say it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think there's actually 6 lines in here. Let's say that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 backslashes in each row. That is not the case here because obviously the first one starts out with 0, then it goes to 2, but let's say it was. And then there's some number of exclamation points here. Let's say that it was 10, 10, no, let's say it was 12, 10, 8, 6, 4. That's not the right number, but let's say it was. Okay, so you're going to have to count up all these guys. And then you have to figure out an expression. Okay, so the number of backslashes. So if we have a for loop, okay, so if I wrote a for loop down here, for int line equals 1, line less than equal to some number here, you should be pretty obvious what that number is, line plus plus. Okay, and then I've got code in here. We need to come up with the expression inside here for the number of, and this is maybe helpful, I'll say, we're going to first print out backslash, then print out exclamation, then print out slash. There's going to be a nested for loop in here for, I'm not going to put that yet. So we just need to figure out what the formula is for how many backslashes and how many exclamation points there are. So in this case, it looks like the loop expression is simply equal to line, okay, because it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's not the case here. You're going to have to figure it out. That's probably too simple of an example. Let's try the other one. So the loop expression here, what is it? Relative to line. So if line is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and what I've got is 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, and actually it's going to be 2, right? What do I have to do? First of all, let's figure out, these are spaced by 2s. So somehow in here, I've got a 2 times line, okay? Every time it's changing by 2. Is it changing? Is it increasing or decreasing? It's decreasing. That's probably going to be a negative 2. And then, so there's some number here. So they put this expression like this. So C, we think is negative 2. What is D now? D, some number minus 2 times the line. So when line is 1, that's minus 2. How do I get something minus 2 is 12? Well, that's going to be 14. 14 minus 2 times 1, 2, is 12. What happens for loop number 2? So when line is 2, then this expression becomes 2 times 2, so minus 4. 14 minus 4 is 10. Let's go down to the end. So when line is equal to 6, That's 2 times 6 is 12. 14 minus 12 is 2. So this loop expression is being controlled by this. Now, all this question is asking is just what are the values here. But what you're actually going to have to do when it comes out to printing out this, you're going to need to have an inner for loop. Now, the key to this problem is to realize that you're already done. You're already done in the sense that you've already figured out what this is going to loop over. What it's going to loop over, what's the loop expression, is right here. This is the key to these types of problems. You need to realize that when you've figured out how many exclamation points are in each row, all you need to do is drop it into a standard for loop from 1 to that expression. Oops. And so 14 minus 2 times line. And then inside here, what are you going to do? You're going to do a system.out.println of what character are we printing out? Remind us of our comment. Printing out the exclamation right there. So that's the way this works. That's not what's required by this problem. You just have to figure out what this ABCD is. But I wanted to show you that the calculating ABCD is eventually going into this, okay? And that's a good segue to the next problem. Okay, so here is actually the place where you're going to need to do that kind of code. So first of all, I need everybody to be able to look at a problem like this and realize what is the structure of this. This structure has a number of rows. How many rows? Everybody count. 5 rows, okay? By how many columns? I can't count right now off the top of my head, but there's some number of columns here. These columns here consist of 3 things: slashes, stars, and slashes, okay? The Space Needle problem, it gets more complex, but it's basically slashes, stars, slashes. So what you need to realize is the structure for this is going to be a set of nested for loops. In all of these ASCII art examples, you're going to have an outer loop over the rows, okay? In this case, generally it's always going to be from 1 to something. In this case, it's going to be from 1 to 5, okay? And then you're going to have an inner loop over the columns, but we need to be a little bit more specific than that, because it's not just 1 set of columns, it's 3 sets of columns. So we're going to loop over the slashes, we're going to loop over the stars, I'm going to loop over the backslashes, okay? In the outer loop, you all need to be able to just immediately spit out what does the outer loop look like, okay? You're going to need to know it's going to have int. I always suggest using row for these types of problems, or line is fine. Okay, row is less than equal to what? Some people get confused at this point, but remember, that's why I'm asking you to write your comments first, okay? What is it you're trying to do? Oh yeah, you're trying to loop over the rows from 1 to 5, okay? Row plus plus. Let's put close bracket around here. Okay, now the next thing, we need to loop over the slashes. So again, you need to remember, okay, loop over int, I'm going to say slash equals 1, slash less than equals to, let's leave that blank for a minute, slash plus plus. Let's create some brackets. Okay, first of all, what are we going to put inside here? What is this doing? Remind ourselves, what is it we're doing? We're looping over the slashes. So what we need to be doing is doing a system.out.print, not lin, but print of slashes, okay? Your job is to figure out what goes in here. If you go back and you look at that previous problem, remember what we did? We came up with a table, okay? We came up with a table by looking at like this. Okay, so the row is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? And we want slashes of, I can't tell what number it is, but let me just put out some numbers, pretending, again, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. Let's suppose that is, okay? So the loop expression is what? It's going to have something to do with which variable, first of all. Which variable do we want to use in here? We need something that changes for each row. And what variable changes for each row? Okay, let's remind ourselves what this line here does. We're looping over the rows from 1 to 5. The loop variable is row. So it's going to have something to do with row. How much are these rows changing each time? Or sorry, not the row, but how much are the slashes changing? They're changing by a factor of 2. So we know it's going to be something 2 times row. Maybe positive, maybe negative. Okay, then we look, okay, I need to go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 8, 10, 6, 4, 2. So it's inverted. So do I want a positive? If I have some number plus 2 times a row, can I get this negative to this decreasing trend? No, it's got to be always minus. Then we just got to figure out what number goes in here. Okay, it's a simple equation. For row 1, something minus 2 is going to equal 10. And for row 2 and for row 5, we do those checks, and that'll come up with an expression. That loop, you're already done once you figure that out. The loop expression just goes in right here, okay? And the same thing is going to happen for this and for this, okay? So that's how you do the star figure. Now let's go to Eclipse and take a look at the Space Needle. So first thing I want you to do is to copy and paste the entire Space Needle in here, okay? You're going to need that. Second, I want you to figure out, actually, let's start from there, okay? If you have very, very little skills or confidence, let's start with this, okay? I create a blank main. I put in a few methods, okay, based on decomposition of this problem, okay? So I'm going to give away the first one, okay? So here's a chunk of code that is repeated right here, okay? Let's see where else it's repeated. It's not repeated anywhere else. Okay, so that is going to be a method. Okay, now I've thrown a couple of names in here that are generic. Don't use these generic names. Give me some smart names, okay? But let's say figure 1 is that thing up there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here, copy this, and I'm just going to, in order to have it do this without changing the tabs, I need to do that. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create these into system.out.printlns. I'm going to copy this for each of these rows. And then I know I'm going to have to close quote that. Some of these things need escape characters. That's part of what you need to know for this chapter. Okay, so now I'm going to remove these quotes, these comments. Okay, so, and actually what I'm also going to do, because it's really helpful commenting, to actually show the reader what it is this method does. Okay, so I'm going to say prints out top of needle, or maybe call it a spire, maybe whatever, it doesn't matter. But so now I know from this methods header exactly what this thing is going to do. Okay, this is not the way I ideally want you to turn it in, but let's just run this. Okay, so that actually gave me something. Okay, so you do this for each part of the figure. You figure out how many static functions you need to draw this, reducing the redundancy. Okay, you create those static methods and you just stick printlns in for everything. Okay, if you just turn that in, you get partial credit. Okay, but not full credit. The next step is you need to go through and figure out, okay, how do I use for loops to help this? So here you're going to write a for loop. For row is equal to 1, row is less than or equal to some number, which should be obvious, row plus plus, and now I'm going to do the println, and I'm going to try to printify this because I really don't want you guys turning in stuff that's poorly indented. Okay, so I'm going to say 10, okay, just because that's what I think is right, But if you think it's not right, then don't do that. What did I goof wrong? I got a row cannot be resolved to a variable. Sorry, int row. Int row, run. Boom. Okay, so I've got part of the Space Needle. So I do that with each of my figures. Some of these figures are very simple, like this part here. If you're going to size this thing, you can't just do printlins here, but if you're going to stick with size 4 and not go for extra credit, that's fine. You can just do a printlin of this thing here. So this thing is all pretty straightforward. You can do that just by one for loop, okay? Others, you cannot, okay? Others, these parts that go bigger and smaller, you cannot. You're going to need nested for loops, okay? But similarly, let's say that I have got another method that's going to be printing out this thing. Okay, so I'm going to start in the body with just a bunch of printlins that do exactly that. Okay, I'm not going to do it here, but you'll get the idea. I'm going to put in a bunch of printlins that print those out. And then, okay, sorry, it's a little bit messy there. And then after I've got those printlins, now I've got to figure out how do I actually write some code for this. So again, you need to be able to look at a problem like this and figure out what is the overall structure. You've got some number of rows here, pretty much all ASCII art. You're doing some number of rows, and then you're kind of doing something over the columns, right? So I'm going to start, and even if you just turn in the pseudocode that I'm going to comment here, that'll give you partial credit. It'll give you more partial credit, okay? So I'm going to loop over rows from 1 to, looks like 4, okay? And then inside that, I know I'm going to loop over. First, I'm going to write columns, but we know that there's actually more complex than columns. There's several things over here. What are we going to be looping over? So first, what I actually have to do is do the underscore slash. Okay, that actually doesn't require a loop because it doesn't change depending on the row. Then I've got to draw the colons. Okay, what is that colons? It's going to be a loop over colons from 1 to what? Let's leave that for a second. Next, I know I'm going to draw these pipes. Next, I'm going to be loop over colons again. Same code as before. And then loop, not loop, but just draw backslash, something like that. Okay. Now you need to fill in the code here. How do we? The hard part of this is doing this looping over the colons. And how do we do that? That's what I've been showing you the whole tutorial. So we have, let's say we have row is 1, 2, 3, 4. We need colons. I'm not going to use the exact. Let's say it was 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay. The expression is okay. What variable what variable changes from 1, 2, 3, 4 depending on the row? Okay, that's probably the loop variable we used here, which I'm going to assume is row. In this case, which is not the case for this example, but it would be 2 times something. Okay, is it increasing? Okay, this one is increasing. That's not always the case in the Space Needle, but this one is increasing, so it's 2 times row plus some number. That number has to make it so that this expression, 2 times row plus this, so 2 times 1 plus some number is equal to 2. Okay, and the next one, 2 times 2 is equal to this. Okay, so this is not the right answer, but that's how you do it. And then once you've got this expression, you're going to have some for loop in here. Okay, and you need to figure out what goes what goes in this question mark here? Remember we talked about this. Some people do have problems with this, but the work you just did to figure out how many colons are in each row, that's the work that's necessary right here. Okay, and then what goes in here? What are you printing? Some people get confused at this point. That's why I ask you to use pseudocode and to make it clear each time, okay? What we're drawing are these colons. So you probably better do that. Draw the colons, okay? Don't use one of the loop variables. That would produce numbers. You don't want to use this or the loop variable over here. You want to use colons, okay? So that's how you do the Space Needle problem. But most important key is I want you to turn the assignment in, okay? If all you can do is have a bunch of printlns, okay, turn that in and explain that to me, and I will work with you. If all you can do is you can do the simple single for loops and do things like this, that's fine. Turn that in, get as far as you can, and I'll help you. Most likely, all of you can at least get as far as doing this, drawing out the pseudocode. I mean, if you can do it in Python even, okay, give me the Python code, all right? But I think once you get to the point where you figured out how many colons are in each row, and you figure out the expression, you're almost done. All you got to do is just stick it in a for loop from 1 to that expression, okay? And that will work for you, okay? So that is how you do. Now, let me tell you a few other tips. Okay, so let's go take a look at the assignment, and I'll show you the rubric. There's a rubric here. I don't always create a rubric, but I created one. So if you calculate those expressions, you get 5 points. If you use multiple nested loops, okay, you get 5 points. If you intelligently name your loop variables, that's going to give you 5 points. If you correctly printed out the needle by any means, just the printlns, you get 5 points for that. Did you comment the headers and are the comments good? That's worth 5 points. So those are important things. Also, don't overcomplicate things, okay? If you're just trying to print out a single set of characters, you don't need a for loop for that, okay? Just print the characters out. You don't need to be printing out the characters after the end here, okay? That's just not necessary. You don't need to be using strings or parameters. In fact, I don't want you to use strings or parameters for this assignment. Just do the basic stuff, okay? And those of you who are advanced, you can do the sizing, okay? This is for size 4. You need to do it for size 2 and for size 6, but it is advanced, and I'm not going to go into details here, but I do encourage you to do that because it is part of the standard UW problem set. All right, so I hope to see code from everybody on time. It's really most important in these assignments for you to put the time in, to watch the videos, to show me what you know, and I will be generous in grading, generous in letting people resubmit, okay? What I really don't want to see is people going to tutors or external sources, getting code from people and submitting that as their own. It will not succeed, okay? I will know immediately if it's your code or not. And if you want to get external help, that's fine. You can get external help, but I'd rather you didn't have them write code for you. I want them to teach you how to do this and have you write the code. If they do write code for you, you need to throw that code away, wait at least 30 minutes, and then write your own code, okay? Write your own code. You can use things that they taught you, but only things that you actually learned and remember and can demonstrate going forward, okay? So please try to stick by those rules, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Bye-bye.